Well, hi there, and welcome to our Motivosity webinar on this fine Thursday. Excited that you're joining us. Many of you know that we had planned to do a live event here in about 10 days' time, and obviously we're not doing that given current conditions. And so we reached back out to our presenters and asked them if they would be willing to share their material virtually through a series of webinars. And this is actually our first one. My name's Joe Staples. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Motivosity. Really glad that you're joining us today for this webinar titled How to Support Your Employer Brand Strategy Through Brand Evangelists. A hot topic, certainly one that we get asked a lot about. And we're really excited to have Elisa Garn join us as our guest presenter. And let me just give you a little bit of background about Elisa. She's currently the Executive Brand Strategist for GBS Benefits, which is a full-service employee benefit broker in Salt Lake City. And I've known Elisa for a number of years, and I would categorize her as the new type of HR leader. Compliance items, process, procedure isn't really the thing that floats her boat. So it's really about being innovative and looking at how you can engage your employees. So certainly excited to have her join us. She's done a lot of things. She's been in HR roles for about 15 years, done things around recruiting and brand strategy, primarily with small to mid-sized businesses. She's a member of the Forbes Human Resource Council. She served as the president of Salt Lake SHRM. She's the co-founder of Disrupt HR Salt Lake City. She currently serves as the executive director for Utah SHRM. And like most HR professionals, her business card has a whole bunch of letters after her name. She as interests, she loves to hike. She's organized hiking groups that probably a number of you have been on. She's trying to convince me that flash mobs are still a thing, and she has a passion for those. I thought those were gone 10 years ago, but maybe
they're never gone.
They're never gone. Maybe we'll hear more about that during the presentation. But she is an experienced brand strategist, and I think what you're going to hear today is just great ways to really set out a plan of how to grow your employer brand, and then some very good tactical things and ideas that you can take and use to benefit your organization. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Elisa.
Thank you so much, Joe. I always love introductions when other people introduce you because it makes you sound at least 3 times better than you actually are in real life. So thank you for that. I'm really excited to be here. A little bummed that I don't get the opportunity to see all of your bright shining faces and know if my jokes are landing well, but I'll do my best and assume everyone is laughing with me. So when I was asked to speak at this conference and what I would want to talk about, this is something that I've had a lot of people reaching out to me about, both in terms of personal branding, how can I help grow my own personal career, but also from other HR professionals of how can I tie in the idea and concept of personal branding and really help build out this robust employer brand strategy to help attract and retain our top talent. So I figured that was a really good thing to talk on today. And of course, you know, there's a lot of information. I'm going to try to dilute it to some of the essentials for a few key takeaways for the group. And then if any of you want more information, you feel free to follow up with me, and I'd be happy to answer any direct questions you have, as well as the Q&A that we have at the end.
And
so
Elisa,
with that, oh yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe.
I'm going to jump in really quick.
Yeah.
There is a Q&A button on the webinar. So if you do have questions for Elisa, if you want to type those out, we'll probably spend the last 10 or 15 minutes going through your questions.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so this is something that has resonated with me since I was a very young girl. If you can't be brilliant, at least be memorable. The reason this has stuck with me is think when we're kids and we have the ideas of wanting to be astronauts and teachers and whatever it is that we look at and the sky's the limit, it's very inspiring to think that you really can be anything. You know, we're very fortunate to live where we live and have those opportunities that we do. But eventually life hits you in the face, and sometimes people achieve those dreams and sometimes they don't. We still need janitors. We still need people that show up and do jobs that maybe are not quite the starry sky that we had intended as children, but are still equally important. So the reason this has connected with me so much is as it relates to branding, not every company out there is going to have the sexiest product or the coolest break room or the best paint colors on their wall, but it doesn't mean that you can't still be memorable and create a brand experience that is going to be perfect for the people that you want to come work with you and curate that articulated tribe. So a couple stories that I want to share with this as far as being memorable. A few years ago, I worked for a recruiting agency here in Salt Lake City, and we were I'm going to say blessed, but probably also somewhat cursed to get the Netflix CS contract and help them scale. So we went from 3 employees to about 480 within a matter of 60 days. Obviously that high volume, we saw a lot of candidates, a lot of people, and it was really hard for everyone to stay memorable. So when candidates would come in, they were always excited about the Netflix brand and name. And, when we would send them off to the Netflix crew for interviewing, we would always say, make sure you're memorable. They see a lot of people. You know, you're excited about this opportunity. You need to find a way to stand out. So one time we had a candidate who truly, in my opinion, probably would have sacrificed anything to work for this company. And he had connected a little bit to the Netflix brand as an enthusiast. He watched Netflix. I think he even said Netflix and chill a couple of times in his interview. But he was so excited about his interview, and we gave him the same advice, be memorable. And he shows up on site to do the interview with the panel of 3 in full head to toe Hulk makeup, costume. His entire skin was green. I mean, this guy, he went all out. And it was so interesting that they didn't even interview him. I mean, he walked into the room and they just said, the fact that you were willing to do this shows your passion for our brand and the company. And they ended up hiring him on the spot. So that was so interesting to me that, if you can make yourself stand out, sometimes that's really what people are looking for and attaching to in terms of the value proposition that you can bring. So you translate that to the employer side and it has equal impact. Additionally, from a personal value standpoint, the way that I've chosen to live my life, I don't always get it right, and I don't profess to be an expert, but one thing that's so important to me from my value statement is everyone matters, including you. And I say including you because sometimes I forget. I grew up when I was younger. I had a lot of problems with my own personal self-esteem and self-worth. And so that's another reminder for me that I want everyone to feel equally important when they interact with me. So I want them to have that tangible feeling when they walk away. But I also want to remember that I need to self-care and take care of myself and value my individual worth as well. So hopefully, that's something that people remember when they interact with me and have those engagements, and just the application of how you can think like that when you're talking about building your strategy for your employer brand. So the scuttlebutt, what are we going to be talking about today? These are the 4 main points I want to hit. Why do we care about employer branding? How do you find your brand enthusiasts? An unlikely courtship. So I'm going to encourage you as an HR department to date with your marketing team. Of course, with 6 feet and, all of the compliance, and make sure that you sign the love contract. And then you're going to plant, prune, and produce your evangelists through a methodology that I'll give you some tips on near the end. So first and foremost, I really love statistics, which you wouldn't think with me being a creative, but I do really enjoy these things. So when you think about what is the return on investment of why employer branding even matters, I won't, since I can't interact with you, I won't ask you this, but just be thinking in your mind 8 times, what is 8 times? Employer branding has been proven that people are 8 times more likely to engage with an employee post or something that an employee says versus something that a company posts directly. The reason being is psychologically, we know that companies are selling us something all the time. But as individuals, We're basically just saying, this is my experience with this. I think you would like it too. Or this was a horrible experience and I never want you to go through the same pain that I do. So 8 times, if you're monetizing that from an employer brand strategy in the context of what we're discussing today, this is your talent acquisition pool. So your ability to, bring the bees in with the honey instead of putting out the vinegar, you're 8 times more likely to attract top candidates, or at least open dialogue conversations to those that you're proactively reaching out to, than if you were to just post a job posting on your own or reach out as the company. Having those introductions and referrals is exceptionally valuable. So some additional stats: 77% of consumers are more likely to purchase after hearing about it from someone they trust. No big surprise to me there. Less than 2% of employees who regularly share, there are less than 2% of employees who regularly share or create employer branded content. And anecdotally, that's usually because they don't know what they should share or if they can. And then, sorry, my percent is cut off here. 26% of employees' influencer programs have been shown to increase revenue increase year over year. So these are things that can actually create dialogue about financial return on investment that is bigger than just, well, we should do it because we want to be popular, or we want to be pretty, or we want people to see us, and we want to be able to brag about ourselves on social media. Employer branding is much bigger than that. It absolutely has to start with authenticity, because without authenticity, you really are just continuing to sell something, and people can smell it a mile away when it's not real. So this is a big one too, 85%. 85%, that's a big number of candidates who claim an employer's brand reputation influences their decisions at least somewhat. So the number is a little bit lower. It was about 40% of significantly impacts their decision. But if they're looking at signing on the dotted line, whether they're comparing you against competitors or not, they want to know that they're going to a company with a good reputation, that's a good place to work, that's going to provide value for the things that they're looking for on a personal level. So these are some examples of either companies that I've worked for or things that maybe matter to me as an individual, but I'm sure in your head you have a list of things that you can think of with past companies and current companies, of things that were memorable. Good memorable, bad memorable, memorable is memorable. Hopefully we're curating an experience with our employer brand that is going to be a positive impact on people. And some of those examples might look like the candidate experience. So what is it like when people apply to work for your company? Do they have to go through a 7-minute application and upload their resume and then replicate that with filling out a form? Is it a quick send where they can just apply with their LinkedIn profile? Is there engagement immediately after? How do you engage with them throughout and let them know and communicate what's happening with the interviews and who they're going to be meeting with and helping them prepare ahead of time? That candidate experience, by the way, just a shout out, one of the companies that gets this right, that does exceptionally well, is Qualtrics. Qualtrics makes you feel like you're Oprah freaking Winfrey if you get rejected. The way that they have handled the volume of candidate applications that they get, same with Delta actually, they know that the majority of people that apply to work there probably are not going to get the job. Not even necessarily because they're not great candidates, but because they don't have enough openings for the people, because they've done so well with their employer brand that, they have this great pipeline of people willing and ready to work for them at the drop of a hat. So they have really good selection. But if you're not protective of the candidate experience, it can in turn damage your employer brand, or actually your company brand. For example, with Delta, if I apply to work with Delta because I love flying Delta and I have a really crappy candidate experience and feel like they didn't care about me at all, well, now that's going to trickle over into my customer experience, and I'm going to have negative things to say about them because of how they treated me wanting to work for their company. So again, it's just another trickle effect and domino impact that you want to be aware of when you're looking at the overall overarching strategy that you're building for your employees. Another thing to look at is culture. Is this where you want to be memorable? And culture is a living, breathing, organic thing that you don't create. Your people create this. So you can help refine it and define it and corral it in, but it's ultimately the way that people act and treat each other as far as what it ends up being. So if this is where you want to have the impact of what's memorable about your company and where you create your value proposition, You need to look at it end to end in terms of, do your policies align? Are people actually engaging in the behaviors that drive the impact that you want to have? And if not, where do you need to make tweaks? That's something that I think a lot of HR people, we talk a lot about culture and we get all excited about it because it's sort of the fun part of HR. You know, you have to do some of the other things, but the culture part is where you really get to connect with your people and help them do their best work and uplift them and help them grow. Most of the HR people that I talk to, including myself, that's what we love about HR. Don't get me wrong. I know that there's a lot of compliance lovers out there too. And I love you guys because you make me able to do the things that I love. So it's a good partnership. But another thing to think about. Also, what about perks and benefits? You know, it was so trendy a few years ago it's become cliched, right? The Nerf gun fights on Fridays and the untapped keg in the break room, like those things are great. And some companies do really well with that. But just remember, first of all, the perks and benefits that you offer are going to be attractive to a certain audience. So another good example I give of this is 401k plans. If you have a really, really generous 401k plan that has, let's just say, a 6% match, 100%, no vesting schedule, it's a safe harbor, and you can do it within 30 days of hire. Truthfully, I don't even know if that's legal, but let's just say hypothetically it is. That's going to be very attractive to a certain life cycle of person. But for somebody that maybe is a bit more senior or not looking for investment, or maybe they're even past retirement age, you've sort of just alienated an entire group of possible employees to be able to come in because that's not something that they're looking for at the stage of life they're in. So when you're looking at perks and benefits, again, it's just something that from a mindset of who is this going to attract? Who is going to want this benefit or perk? And is that the person that we want to help curate the culture and environment that we want here? And are those people going to stay? Finally, you have products and services. It's one of my favorite companies, and part of it is because of the team that works there, is Traeger pellet grills. I love Traeger. I bought I did recruiting for them for a couple of years and got to know many of their team members. And it was working with the people that sold me their product. I mean, as soon as their new model came out, I was like, done. I can't wait to buy it. I am happy to pay full price. And I was in their showroom picking it out and bringing it home, and so excited to set it up with my husband. Not everybody, again, has a sexy product or service. Sometimes it's, actually a really good example, janitorial services. I mentioned earlier, not all of us get to grow up to be astronauts. But that may not seem like the type of industry that has this really great, robust, cool, awesome opportunity to brag about and have fun with. But I've actually seen some companies that do have fun with this. There's a great organization that helps get felons back to work. It's a recruiting agency called Cornbread Hustle back east. And Sherry Garcia, who is the founder of that, was a reformed felon herself and still to this day struggles with drug and alcohol addiction. And it was important to her. Like, she personally felt that pain of, it's very hard for me to find work now because I made mistakes in my past and I'm trying to correct that, but nobody will give me a chance. So one of the things that they've been doing through coronavirus COVID is they have their team that how I'll become certified in going out and cleaning and sterilizing locations, work locations with their staff that are, again, janitorial, but they're getting amazing, not only press and credibility for it, but these people are still working and they're happy to do it. And they see the impact that they're having and all of this gratitude that's coming their way for doing this work. So even though you may not necessarily feel like what you do or the company that you work for has that ability to have that really pretty, shiny logo or brand or social media presence, you can still find your own way that's authentic to who you are and the team that you work with to help showcase the advantages of what it's like working for you, and have your employees share that openly. So how do you find these people in your company? Especially for those of you that work for larger companies, it can be really challenging to get to know every single person. Whenever I go to a conference, I try to make it a point to shake as many hands as I can. And I'll be honest, right now, this is really killing me not to be able to see all of your faces. But knowing that smaller organizations, especially if you're responsible for the recruiting and onboarding, you likely are building those relationships one-on-one every single day as you bring those people in. But as the company scales and grows and you start to get into larger organizations, you don't always get to know people on the level of other than, maybe their date of birth and where they work and who their manager is, since we see those reports all the time. So it's important to understand how you're going to tap into these brand evangelists without the opportunity of knowing everyone individually. And by the way, not injecting your own bias of who you personally enjoy spending time with. So really 2 great ways that I do this are I always look at the social channels. Who is engaging with the content? What, if somebody is liking or sharing or commenting, that's usually a good indicator that they're really proud to co-associate their employment working for you with the company. Another one is who's posting about you. So go out and do a search or look at your company page and who's tagging you, whether that's through LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever social media channels, and see what they're saying. Hopefully it's positive. If it's negative, you might want to do a little bit of homework and, go on your Glassdoor and do some corrections as needed. But when you see that people are posting proactively without being asked, without being directed or even seeing it from the company, but maybe there was an exciting press release that came out, or your CEO recently recorded a video that was posted. If you see people sharing that content, that's usually a pretty good indicator that they're really proud to work for your organization and will have positive things to say. Another one is who's sharing your job openings or press releases or news, sort of like the last one, but it's a little more specific to the news and content and updates of what's happening in the organization. And it's by proxy a little bit of a passive referral of, hey, I work here and I love it so much, you should work here too. That lovely NPS question that we all like to ask in surveys. So internal engagement along those same lines. Most of you, hopefully, if you're doing surveys, are doing them anonymously. So you may not necessarily know the person that is attached to a certain ranking. But if you do happen to have access to the data and you can see who your natural promoters are, meaning that they are ranking an ENPS or a employee net promoter score as a 9 or a 10, which by the way, Motivosity does do this on their quarterly surveys for employees, then that's another good place for you to look at, okay, well, they love working here. Let's find out why they love working here. Let's have some focus groups. Let's have some dialogue. Another one is your top performers who are also aligned with your core values. This is an important distinction because I guarantee everybody that's listening to this right now has worked for a company that had a top performer that was a cultural disaster, that brought people down, that didn't live by the values, that maybe, they even threw other people under the bus for their own success. None of us like to work with people like that, but it's so hard to detach and let them go or even correct that behavior because we're afraid of losing the revenue if we do. I am preaching to the choir here, but you all know that if we keep those people, it's actually more detrimental to our revenue than if we were to let them go and let the rest of the team elevate. However, if you have a top performer, and I'm not just talking about sales, but I'm talking about people that really, whether it's through discretionary effort or they just bring a high level of talent and aptitude to their role, those people who also live and breathe the values that support the culture, those people, whether they are advocating for you proactively or not, are the ones that are going to help you drive your employer brand strategy through more influencer marketing type behavior. Another one is who proactively introduces themselves to new hire, kind of a fun one that you wouldn't really think about. But if you have people in your organization that can't wait to meet more people that are coming into the organization, of course, pay attention to the behavior and attitude when they're introducing themselves. Sometimes they just can't wait to spread their cancer of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you started working here. It's so horrible, don't you think? Most people are not going to do that. If they're introducing themselves to a new hire, it's usually because they want to help them feel connected to the company. They can empathize what it's like being a new person, and they want to help them feel embraced and welcomed and that they fit in. And those people are usually really good brand enthusiasts for you to tap into as well. Lastly, ask for referrals. So this is my favorite one because when I get busy and I'm doing, 17 different things and trying to keep all of my plate spinning, I don't always get to spend the time with employees that I would like, but my employees are spending time with employees all day long. So sometimes I'll even just ask randomly, water cooler conversation. Hey, who do you think is like the face of the company, like who has the best things to say about working here. And then usually the employees are going to have one or two people that come to mind of like, oh my gosh, Sharon in accounting, she won't shut up about how amazing it is to work here. Or Don down the hall, all he does is talk about how great it is to be here. I'm not saying that's going to happen in every company, but a lot of companies that I've been with, either in consulting or been internally, I can always think of one or two people that just have that shine about them, you know, whether it's their personality and demeanor or whether it truly is that they love working for the organization. There's usually people that come to mind, and asking for those referrals is another good way if you don't have the opportunity to connect with your employees on a day-to-day basis. Okay, let's talk about the courtship. So when I say this, of course, it's a little tongue in cheek. Don't go dating your marketing team unless, you know, you do sign your love contract. But the reason this is so important is when you're building an employer brand strategy, you have to remember you already have a customer brand strategy, and there's an existing marketing team, and they already have an existing strategy and an existing brand identity. And if you're not being respectful and conscientious of that, it can actually cause a lot of damage, not only with your relationship with the marketing team, but with the brand itself. So examples of this would look like, you know, in brand identity, the second item here, logo marks. Are you using it correctly? Are you following the guidelines? You know, you can't just go out and pull it off of the website and then throw it on a document that you're sending out without running it by your marketing team, because sometimes it's not on brand and can be damaging and confusing to the work that they're trying to do to create brand credibility with the customer market. Some companies have a really, really strict code as far as how you can use things. So everything from typeface or fonts to size to colors. The brand color, you know, like the colors I'm using on this presentation, for example, that yellow has a very specific palette color that if I'm trying to replicate it on another document, I can't just choose yellow. You know, like I need, for example, Tiffany blue. Tiffany blue is now, that is the name of the color because they've done such a good job of co-branding their name and their brand with that color and that logo that it's synonymous. I mean, when people see that color, they know automatically and instinctively that it translates to the Tiffany brand, Tiffany & Co. brand. So it's just one, and like you just need to have the conversation. And when you develop this relationship with the marketing team, they're going to be able to tell you, where do you have some wiggle room? Where do you need to stay in the box? But hopefully also we'll have some resources to share with you as well. You know, maybe they have a marketing intern that's looking to get some experience in the employer branding space. Wouldn't that be happenstance? They have the training and the knowledge about what true marketing is, instead of just creative interest that may not necessarily run on par with building an actual strategy. So if this isn't your expertise, it's a great opportunity for you to learn on the job and grow your skill set from learning from some of your colleagues within your marketing group. And this can also, by the way, expand. Marketing usually also encompasses public relations, communications. Those are all elements that you're going to want to utilize and put as part of your brand strategy. So having this dialogue happening between your two departments is essential for you to make sure that there is symmetry between what you're trying to do for the internal brand and what they're trying to do for the external brand. All right, so this one's probably the most important part. If you want brand evangelists to be talking about your company and helping you promote the great things about working there as a candidate, as an employee, maybe even as a boomerang candidate, somebody that exits your company, you want them saying hopefully positive things about you that are going to resonate. You know, again, going back to that 8 times, that slide at the beginning, people are more likely to listen to what they have to say versus what you have to say. It's just a natural psychological trust barrier that we have between company and people. So a few ways that you can adopt this. First one is include this in your new hire orientation. And there's actually, so no relation, but there's a contact of mine. His name is Jake Garn. He's awesome. He has a creative career and actually built out a specific program just to implement with companies. It's a 4-week, 1 day a week, 1 hour per week. And he comes in and breaks it down to 4 different modules. And he talks about, how basically trains your employees on how to share about the company on social media. One of the trainings that he does is how to take amazing pictures with your cell phone. How many of us have, oh man, especially Facebook. Like I love seeing posts, natural posts that don't look staged, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, that could have been a really great picture if they just would have done this, or if the lighting were over here. And that's probably just the way that my brain works. But if you have training with your people to help them know what those lines in the sand are, what their boundaries are, they're much more likely to feel that empowered of, again, going back to an earlier slide, less than 2% of employees share things, but it's usually because they don't know that they can, and they don't know what they should share. So if you can give them that information as a new employee coming in and empower them through a social media policy, make sure that they know your IT usage policies, if you don't want them posting at work on company time or whatever, a little outdated in my opinion, but just be conscientious of that so they know what the boundaries are. If people know what's expected of them, then they're usually really excited to go and do this for you. You will never find a happier employee than their first day on the job. Like, that is the best, shining, happy, I made the best decision. And you want to confirm that at every step of their first day that you can, to keep them as high as you can for as long as possible. So helping them know that you want them to share their excitement about being there, and what have you loved about orientation, and how can we make it better, and then listen and act on those opinions. Super, super powerful when it comes to not only building your employer brand strategy, but executing. So show and tell is another important one. This is just a little silly Utah humor, but lead them, guide them, walk beside them. So don't only show them, but make sure they know, again, what's expected, and then go along with them. So bring up some of those examples that you've seen from past employees, pull it up live if you have. They didn't ask me to, but those of you that know anything about my social media, I love Motivosity. I love it, love it, love it. I am their brand enthusiast, and they don't even pay me to do it. So I just love it. But one of the things I really like about them specifically is at my previous company, when we would do onboarding, I would pull up our Motivosity account and show new employees our feed and show them exactly what was being shared, how people were being recognized, the connection to our values. We went through the definitions together, and that was such an impactful way for people to feel welcomed and entrenched in the culture day one. Because another thing that they would see was that they showed up in the feed. So-and-so started at the company today. And then you could see that people were welcoming them and commenting them. And it was just this way for them to feel like they were valued and seen, and that we were happy they were there. So showing instead of just telling is a very important part of, just again, making sure that your people are super on board and that they know that they made the right decision and what you're expecting of them. Next, praise in public. We've heard this a lot of times in HR when it comes to coaching, but if you see that your employees are doing exactly what you wanted, and that's a great example, go and engage with their post. Do it as you as an individual, as the HR person, or do it as the company. I think it actually means a bit more coming from a company, but both of those things are important. You have somebody that has taken time to interact with your audience or their audience and say something, hopefully unsolicited. Why would you not want to engage in that and congratulate them and thank them, and maybe even add your own comments if they're asking questions or looking for, maybe they're working on their own personal brand. That's such a cool opportunity for you to co-share in that excitement that they have. We would always walk new hires around when we had them come into the office, and they would have lunch with our CEO and his wife every single orientation that we had. So sometimes it was just one or two people, sometimes it'd be a larger group of 5 or 6, but everybody got to meet and interact with our owners in a very personal way that had nothing to do with business, totally off-site, really just wanted to get to know you. And every comment that we did on our engagement surveys after orientation, that was the number one thing by far that people appreciated the most, was feeling valued, seen, and that the CEO took time and actually cared and wanted to be spending time with them as well. Super, super impactful. And public praise with social media and advocacy that these brand enthusiasts are doing on your behalf, they want to feel that same recognition. They want to know that what they've done was visible to their company, because they're proud, and you should be able to celebrate that with them. Finally, even though you should praise in public, you should redirect in private. Don't ever post something as a company or as an individual about, hey, Susan, that was a little inappropriate, you talking about this on your social media. Why don't you come see me tomorrow? Oh, that just like gives me goosebumps, and not in a good way, just thinking about doing that. Like, ugh, yuck. Not only is it visible to the whole world that you just chastised this employee for saying something, but it's very, very damaging to your brand in terms of how you interact with negative criticism, because it could be valid. And that's the other point in this last post is, don't call out a bad post online, but it could still be something that you need to coach to. If it's offensive, if it violates your policy, if it's inappropriate, then you should absolutely follow whatever your internal procedures are for managing that. But if it's just a little off, like the language that they used maybe is not quite on brand, or maybe they used an F word that might not be some way that you want to represent your organization. That never happens, right? But if it does, just pull them in and say, hey, you know what? I'm so excited about your enthusiasm. Loved your post. But you got to remember, like when you're dropping the F-bomb and talking about our company, it kind of looks like we're doing that. So one thing I'd encourage you to do is next time, maybe just keep the profanity at bay, save that for your personal feed, with whatever you're doing. But we really, really do appreciate how much you love working here, and we love having you here just as much. So I think that there's ways that you can do it that doesn't always sound, like you're coming down as the principal's office type approach, but still just trying to redirect the behavior to get to the outcome that you're all looking for. All right. I know that that was a pretty bird's eye view of employer branding. I want to encourage you to connect with me on any of these channels. I will tell you that the ones that I'm most engaged with are LinkedIn and my email, but I am on Twitter, new to that, a couple months running. But with all of this, I understand that this can feel very overwhelming and can be very complicated the first time. So just like any muscle that you're flexing or stretching or growing, it can be a bit painful the first few times that you're doing this. So if you're looking for guidance, I'm happy to connect you with additional resources, or even spend some time with you and give you some additional pointers if any of this connected with you. But hopefully there was something memorable for all of you. I encourage you, I know that we've got a couple of questions coming in that Joe's going to help facilitate here, but encourage you to ask those now as well, since we've got a few minutes before we have to end. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Joe.
Lisa, great content. A lot of good information that people are able to do something with. And we've got some good questions for you. The first one goes back to the beginning of your presentation. I think it was probably in reference to the Qualtrics reference. The person asked, how do you give some practical advice of how you can help applicants feel really good about their experience when you're a small company and you've got limited HR resources?
Well, one of the cool things about being a small company is it's actually, in my opinion, easier to manage that experience, because it's more manageable in terms of how much effort you have to put in for fewer candidates. Now, that's not always going to be the case. Maybe you have a position and you've got over 100 candidates and it's going to be impossible for you to connect one-on-one. But I always try to just put myself in the shoes of the candidate. So one suggestion I have is go through your own process, apply for your own job and see what it's like. And that's everything from the technology side to how the communication is handled throughout the process, as well as the time that it takes. We're working when we're going through the candidate experience on the employer side. So 3 days to us is not a lot of time, but 3 days to a candidate when they're actively looking and maybe even juggling a few different options and or unemployed is an eternity. So just staying in touch with them and showing them the respect and courtesy of, I value your time just as much as my own, is one very, very easy way to stand out without having to do all the fluff of sending them gifts and, like going above and beyond with the creativity of your job descriptions, even like just spending the time to send a personalized message or thank them for applying, whatever that looks like that's true to the company, I think is a very low-hanging way for anybody, regardless of company size, to make that impact of candidate experience.
Cool, good. This next question, and I think there's probably 3 different branches to it. So Eric asks, how do you find this line between encouraging employees to act authentically, but also make sure they color inside the lines of how they're representing the customers on what they post?
Great question. My view on this is you shouldn't be drawing so many lines that it becomes confusing or a burden for them to feel empowered. So the drawing of the lines of the sand, really all that should be is, here's who we are as a company, and here's the things that we're proud of. Does that align with what you think? Holding those focus groups ahead of time and making sure that the way that you portray your employer brand is authentic to what your employees actually feel, usually will align those lines in the sandbox really well. But when it comes to, okay, how do we get them to then go out and share that and manage it and make sure that it's, that it is what we want them to be sharing and it is promoting what we want. One thing that we do at GBS is I have a group of these brand evangelists, and we talk once a month to say, this is our focus this month. This is what we want to talk about. This is the message we want to share. So for example, one month it might be mental health. All right, guys, we're talking all things mental health, everything that we're going to share on behalf of the company, everything that we want to talk about and promote on our social media channels. This is the topic, but then we allow people to do it in their very own voice. So I'm not going to tell you what to post. I'm not going to give you content to share. I want you to share that message for how it matters to you and your own personal experience and what you have done with that has nothing to do with GBS. It's really just about promoting this topic and idea. You're already employed. People can see that. But now we have a correlation of topic and intent of our strategy of what we're trying to share with this group of people that we've identified, have a social media influence or interest and want to share that with their audience. So it's not necessarily going to fit that way with every company, but I think giving that guidance on a regular basis and checking in with them, and again, showcase the ones that are great. If people see what's being praised, they're more likely to emulate that in future engagements and posts versus the ones that probably don't get the attention.
So let's stay on this thread for just a minute. I think it probably got amplified a little bit with COVID-19. Companies, went to social media maybe a little bit more than they had, and some of the things looked very staged. It was pretty evident that the employer went to their employees and said, "Go post about this," and then right after that, they said, "Go post about this."
Mm-hmm.
And it comes across very unauthentic. How do you navigate that? How do you stay away from that?
I think it's interesting because I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I would say that that's not what this is. If you're talking about using employer branding in conjunction with your brand enthusiasts, what you just explained to me is a marketing strategy, not brand enthusiasts. These are people that maybe you've identified that, okay, these people have a certain number of followers, or these people have a certain impact, or they're at a certain level in the company and they can create more impressions. So we want them to share this content, take this picture, say this thing, and it's very cut and paste. To me, that's part of an overall marketing strategy of trying to get a message out, but it is not a brand enthusiast that is taking an idea or sharing an authentic message about what they want to share. It's something that's being spoon-fed to them to share. So I do think that there's a distinction. And I also agree that, especially with everything going on, you need to be aware of how social media is it going to be timeless? The things that are being shared right now, the things that are being said right now, the things that companies are doing in this current unprecedented pandemic, it is going to be looked back on as far as how is that going to be perceived, and was that action timeless? In 5, 7, 10 years, when people look back on that, is it going to be something that was memorable for the right reasons? Or is it going to be seen as kitschy or, trying to take advantage of, or, like some of that negative press that you can get when you have good intentions, but maybe not necessarily what is appropriate for the environment and circumstance.
Yeah, fair. And I think as you consider who's putting messages out, maybe one short answer question is, are these brand evangelists, how formal or informal is the selection process? You kind of open it up to everybody? Do you hand pick them? Talk about that.
I think it depends on the company. I mean, if you're a scrappy startup and you've got 20 people and everybody loves working there and it's all about the hustle and you need to get the message out about your company and brand, but you're all willing to do it because you're all equally invested, it's probably appropriate for it to be a very informal selection process of, hey guys, we're going to have a 1-hour training on how to use social media. Come and, learn about it so you can go and share your messages. Versus a very large enterprise organization that maybe has 10,000 employees, that selection process is probably going to be more formalized, I would imagine, because everything's formal in a company of 10,000 employees. I just think it needs to match, we use the word and it's become a buzzword cliched, authenticity, but it needs to be. Just like on personal branding, if I'm trying to share and promote something that is not actually something I care about, people know. Like, I no longer speak or talk to people about things that I know. Like, I don't go in and teach entry-level HR practices anymore because I know that I don't have a love and a passion for that. I mean, I've done it in my career, but it's no longer the value that I bring, and people can feel that when I go in and present. So just like when you're building a program like this, the passion for wanting to participate, the self-selection process, in my opinion, is really just one channel of how you identify people. I think going after those that you see as, the ways to identify some of those examples I gave of looking for the referrals, looking at your survey results, looking at your high performers that align with your values. Those are also proactive ways where you can invite people to participate, but it still needs to be done because they desire it. If you ask them to share something and they're like, I don't really like to be out on social media very much. I don't really like to promote things out there. I kind of like to stay a little quiet. They shouldn't be part of the program because it's not real and authentic to who they are.
Good. As you think about the content of what people are posting, I think there's also this challenge that, and as a marketer, this same challenge that we have. You can't let things blend into white noise. They can't turn into kind of these generic posts and generic messages. So, I think we see companies where they're active on social media, but the posts are, man, this is a great place to work. I love it here. The people are all great. And that's all that it says. And after a while, everybody goes, okay, yeah, you love it here. People are great. And it's a great place to work. Versus the thing that, gets engagement, that gets people to read, to comment, to engage with different posts, is when people share much more specific things. I had this problem. I met with my boss. Here's what he did. And the story gets told. So one question is around how do you coach brand evangelists to make these things more specific and meaningful versus just, yep, I'm checking the box twice a week, I'm posting something and it all sounds like everybody else.
I think there's a couple opportunities to do that. One, I think a lot of us hear those stories verbally, like, this is something that happened and here was the outcome. And I just wanted to share that with you because it was really meaningful to me. Encourage them in that moment. That would make a really good post. Would you be willing to share that? There's for those of you that know Bamboo HR, when they introduced paid vacations, holy smokes. I wanted to work there and I didn't know anything about Bamboo HR at the time. Like, I didn't even know what they did, but I was like, if you're going to give me an allowance to go take a vacation every year and all I have to do is post about it on our internal social media, done. Like, I'll work wherever, that sounds great to me. And they've been able to tap into, you want to talk about strategic alignment. That strategy has invited, for one, a very certain personality type, because a lot of, I have to be careful here because I don't want to speak on their behalf. This is nothing that they've told me. I'm just as an observer paying attention to this. They have been able to attract very young talent, maybe emerging talent is a better way to say that because it's not necessarily an age, but people that are just getting started in their lives that can't afford to go on vacations. You know, they're working on trying to buy their first home, starting a family, maybe getting married. And so imagining having $2,000 as a travel budget every year to be able to go and experience life, what a valuable benefit. I would love to promote that on social media. Here's my travel pictures that I'm already going to be taking, but I'm here because Bamboo HR made this happen for me. Amazing, 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 and very powerful strategy that they've implemented with that. And it's been very, very successful. So, you know, back to your question about this, I think one is on the spot, like you just shared something with me in an email or in a conversation, right then and there, invite them to share it on social media if they're comfortable. Other ways that I think that you can do that is, you know, Jared Olson with Motivosity is really good about sharing other people's celebrations and successes, because many of us are wired to be very humble. Not everyone is the arrogant narcissist like Elisa Garn that's very open in sharing their successes. And I think that that's another cool opportunity, is look for possibly a steward in the company that can share those very specific things on behalf of the company. I think it loses a layer of credibility if it's somebody else, but if it's an employee that's not necessarily the company, it still can have some really good impact there as well. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, when you're looking at how you would entice people to do this, I really do think that it starts with what I mentioned earlier. Let them know that it's okay. You know, let them know that if you love working here, we want you to talk about it. And more than just writing an anonymous Glassdoor review, we want you to feel empowered and encouraged to be proud to work here, because we're proud to have you here.
And Elisa, I would add that, you know, I think this comes down to some training as well. You know, as you're meeting with new employees and you're encouraging them to do it, showing examples of great posts that got, you know, good pickup and good engagement, and pointing out what was good about those posts. Not that the story would be the same, but some of the underlying components would help people to understand that better.
Yeah.
Next question. This was an interesting one. Do you need a tool to be able to manage all of this? There are some out there that allow you to manage kind of social media posts and brand evangelism. What are your thoughts there?
I personally don't have any experience with those tools, which probably takes some people by surprise, because I love, you know, knowing all the things that are out there. But I just like it to be more organic. I just think that it feels, I'm a warm and fuzzy person. Like, even though I love data and statistics, most of my emotions are made off of gut feel. So, you know, like if you get to the point or the level that you need a tool to help manage this, for sure, absolutely look at those and vet them and see if it makes sense. Like, if there's alignment there and it's really going to help drive the behavior or outcome that you're looking for with this program, sure, you know, I think there's value in that. But for me personally, in my experience, I haven't gotten to the point where I want it to be such a machine that I'm measuring, you know, like, I don't know, once I tie metrics to something like this, then it feels like it's sort of like in recruiting when it becomes butts and seats, you know, like I have so many recs to fill and I have this date that I have to get them done. And so I'm paying less attention to quality and more attention to quantity. And so just my own point of view, that's not how I like to do stuff like this, but it doesn't mean that that's the right way. That's just, you know, the approach that I take when I manage these programs. However, whoever asked that, I would love for them to share me the name of those companies so I can take a look at them, because I do love to know all the things, and I don't know any of those companies.
Yeah. So Eric wrote it, and he said that he looked at LinkedIn Elevate as one example. We've got time for a couple more questions. The need or the appropriateness of providing incentives to brand evangelists. Good idea, bad idea? Is it swag? Is it cash? Do you do nothing?
I think you can do it in a classy way, but you do have to be cautious of walking that fine line of not having it feel like a bribe. Again, I'm actually gonna showcase an example with Motivosity because I think you guys do this really well. You know that I go out and advocate on behalf of Motivosity any chance I get because it is something I really believe in. It's a tool and a technology that has helped shape my career. That's a big deal to me. So of course I'm going to go out and talk about it. And occasionally you guys will, send me a little gift or let me know, that you're thinking about me or invite me to stop by and have lunch with the team or whatever. Like, I think that there's an opportunity to appreciate the effort without having it feel like you're buying it off, and I think with social media, it's the same way where if you're doing something more formalized where you have an actual brand advocacy group, probably makes sense. Like give them a little box of swag that has like a t-shirt or a hat or something that they can even incorporate into their pictures to help share and showcase the brand because they want to. Like if you say, hey, we're going to give you this shirt and you need to post a picture of you with this shirt 3 times a month on your Instagram, bah, that's rubbish. But if you can do it in a way that's like, hey, we just want to give this to you, wear it when you want. If you like it, great. If you want to give it away, fine. But we just want you to have this as a way of saying thank you. So it can be done, but you do need to be careful, I think.
Good, good. Okay, 2 last questions. Don't anybody log off because the last question is the best one. Elisa, as a marketer, we use brand briefs, and it's kind of the guideposts that allow us to say, here's the personality of what the company is. So as we launch products, or as we do a press release, or as we write content for the website, it all kind of fits inside of that brand brief because it defines what the personality of the company is. Does it make sense to do that, to use that same tool to create a brand brief for these brand evangelists, to give them some guideposts as to, here's what we would like people who read your posts to feel?
Yes, 1,000%. Yes, this is the sandbox thing that needs to happen so your people know what that brand voice looks like and feels like. Like they're still going to say it in their own voice. A lot of the things that I post on my own personal LinkedIn on behalf of GBS or, like a company that I'm promoting is in my voice. If you were to take my exact post and put it into the company, it would not fit, not at all. Because sometimes I'm very casual in my communication. Sometimes I'm posting pictures that don't align. So not only a brand brief, but I also think considering creating a style guide that aligns with the external marketing as well. So you know how to be consistent with things like graphics and typeface and colors, and maybe even work with your marketing team to say, we want one that's complementary, but we want one specific to the employer brand. So it's going to be a little different, but we still want to complement the external brand. I totally think that is worth the investment of time for building an overall strategy for this. Yes.
Good. And then obviously the line is, don't constrain it too much to where now you all sound like, these very staged or generic people posting the same things. Okay, I promised that the best question is the last question. What if I want to be like Elisa when I grow up?
Oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. If you want to be like me, then you need to wake up.
You gotta hear the second half. You gotta hear the second half.
Okay.
What are some good steps to take to begin a career in company branding?
For me, it started with just honestly an interest. I didn't recognize that I was a creative until halfway through my career. And just naturally, as part of my regular job, I found myself volunteering for projects that had to do with the creative space. So, you know what? I can create a graphic for that wellness program that we're doing, or I can create an email and type that up and write something that people will actually read. I discovered through my own interests and passions that I even wanted to do this. And then from there, started changing conversations in interviews and with my managers as far as my career path on how I could tie in and add value there, in addition to my existing responsibilities that allowed me to gain that experience. But then also when I would change jobs, either in the company, through promotion or externally with my next position, to say, look, yeah, I know payroll benefits. I've done that for years, but here's some other things that I can add that I didn't see listed in your job description, but I think will really help get the value that you're looking for in a role like this. And when you can start that, again, being memorable as a candidate, I think that's really cool when you can come to a hiring manager or a CEO and say, yeah, I've got the job description, but I also bring this extra stuff that you didn't even know that you wanted. Not only are you memorable, but you get a lot more job offers that way. And you get to do work that you want to do, in addition to the work you have to do.
Great. Well, Lisa, thanks so much for your insight, for the answers to the questions, for the original presentation. Really some great stuff there. To everyone that attended, thank you for being here. This will be posted on motivosity.com in a recorded fashion if you want to go back through it. And you saw Elisa's contact information as well. And we will continue to invite you. I think we've got the next 4 of these webinars that were a result of the canceling or postponement of our Movers Conference. And we'll be sure those invitations go out to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.